Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Elmer's Pet Rabbit, released in 1941. It's the 312th in the series and it's directed by Chuck Jones. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 3 Blu-ray set, and I'll have a link below to that set. It is under copyright. You'll not find this on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it, and they might. It's a pretty safe cartoon, and it's definitely an interesting curio released around the earlier days of Bugs Bunny, and I'll certainly go through some of my observations regarding that. But in case you haven't seen this one, you've got Elmer. He's going for his daily walk, I suppose, and he's convinced to buy this cute little rabbit that's in the pet store. So he takes him home, makes a home for him, and Bugs ends up tormenting him all throughout the short. So there's not really much by way of story here. It's very basic, but that's fine. That's kind of short it is. But in terms of trivia, the big one is that Bugs Bunny actually gets his name here. So this is the second Bugs Bunny short, but it's the first time he's named, because the wild hair is just a bunny. And I guess he's been retroactively called Bugs Bunny. But it's kind of weird because here you see Bugs Bunny wearing yellow gloves, which I am aware they reused this look for the Looney Tunes cartoon series that they did fairly recently in the early 2020s. But he also has a deep voice. He doesn't have any buck teeth except on the featuring Bugs Bunny screen. And with that voice, he sounds more like the voice that was used in Elmer's Candid Camera, which featured a bunny, not quite Bugs Bunny, so like a precursor. So here he's slightly redesigned, though not quite the design that was used in Tex Avery's short A Wild Hare. So what does all this mean? It means that there was no one straight line in the creation of the Bugs Bunny character. You had Tex Avery, he made his funny short, Wild Hare, and honestly, he probably thought that was it. He had a funny idea, it was written, it was directed, it was done, but it proved to be so popular and was a smash hit. Meanwhile, you have Chuck Jones, he does his own thing. He teams up Elmer Fudd, who was a character at the time, and teams him up with this Jimmy Stewart-sounding bunny, possibly influenced from the earlier Bugs Hardaway hair that was in a few of those shorts as well. My guess is that after making Elmer's Candid Camera, Jones had the bunny redesigned slightly and was creating his own short. In the meantime, A Wild Hare gets released, becomes a smash hit, and this short was a convenient excuse like, hey, you like the rabbit? Here's another one, even though he's not quite the same character. In fact, here, Bugs Bunny is not his usual witty, sarcastic self. He's like a completely different character altogether. Nonetheless, it's still part of the journey, and it's also part of Chuck Jones's journey to go away from those Disney-esque shorts, which I know we've got more Sniffles shorts to cover during the year of 1941, but he starts to move away from that, and you can see here already some improvement in terms of his speed and gag timing. But despite all that, is this short any good? Honestly, I think it is funny. I actually like this one, maybe more so as a curio, but there's a lot in here that gives me a bit of a chuckle. It's not a go-to one for me. I actually prefer Elmer's Candid Camera only because of how crazy Elmer gets towards the end, but this one definitely has a lot of merit. So let's take a look at this one from start to finish, and I'll go through all the other references throughout because there's actually some references towards movie stars and that sort of thing. It's interesting to note, if you look at the title card, it looks pretty much the same as Goodnight Elmer, the masterpiece short that everyone loves. So why they kept the same style, I don't know. Maybe they were considering to save time and money just to have a consistent style, maybe? I don't know. Regardless, it's a similar design. And as an interesting aside, you've got here Supervision Charles M. Jones, and you've got animation Rudy LaRiva. And us Looney Tunes fans, it's a little bit of an in-joke there because you got Chuck Jones creates the Coyote and Roadrunner series, directs some of the funniest shorts ever made. Then in the 60s, Rudy LaRiva becomes a director. He directs some new Roadrunner shorts, which are mostly terrible. There's a few decent things here and there, but for the most part, they're not particularly great. So it's kind of interesting seeing those two names in the title card. But we start off with how we know his name is Bugs Bunny, because he's actually not named in the short itself. So again, this goes into what I was saying before. It was likely that this was in production. A Wild Hare comes out, becomes successful. The theater owners are demanding more. They conveniently have this short, so they just make this title card, and that's that. That's why perhaps this drawing has the buck teeth, everywhere else does not. But it's an interesting drawing. Look at the weight of the skin just drooping down on the very bottom of that drawing there. It's a very well-rounded drawing. I wonder who actually did that. I don't think it would have been Jones. It's the Jones style of Bugs Bunny around this time, but if you have an idea, definitely let me know. But we start off with a very interesting directing choice where we follow just the legs of Elmer Fudd, and he's doing his wonderful rendition of The Fountain in the Park, which is also known as Strolling Through the Park One Day, especially with Arthur Q. Bryan doing his wonderful rendition of it. But I like the fact that he's walking through, we see some magazines in the back, some of which are definitely parodies of magazines that would have been around at the time, including C, which is a parody of Look magazine, and that will be brought up later on as well. But he walks by the lingerie store and, well, he was taken by surprise, and he definitely pauses to have a look. I mean, he lives in a house by himself, so, well, can't really blame him too much for that. So, in any case,
while strolling through the park one day, in the merry month of May, I was taken by surprise by a pair of roguish eyes in the merry, merry month of May.
But in a split second, if you look at the door of the lingerie store, it says POU-POUX. Is that what? Poo-poo? Some kind of a weird French lingerie type name? I don't know, but I just noticed that. It's kind of weird. But we see that Elmer continues on, and we pan up to see Elmer looking on this bashful looking rabbit. And I love the animation of that, saying, you know, rabbit for sale, neat, housebroken. I mean, a big red flag for me has to be the fact that we've gone from $150, and that's in 1940s money, mind you, to 98 cents. And what do we hear during this scene? Of course, we're going to hear Angel in Disguise, right? A nice little musical pun there by Carl Starling. Now, I'm not sure of the reference of the pet store there. I've tried a few different variations on that name, and I can't seem to find anything. So if you know what the reference is to that pet store, definitely let me know. But we see a few signs here that drop down, including a reference that I do know, which is Ask the Man Who Owns One, and that was an advertising slogan for Packard automobiles. But we see a man's best friend is his rabbit, which is a play on a man's best friend is his dog, which is a pretty common saying. Signed, Rabbit Taylor, a parody of actor Robert Taylor. We see that Elmer is won over and decides to have a rabbit. You know, maybe he's lonely. That's why he wants a pet. That's why he was looking in the lingerie store before. He continues singing The Fountain in the Park. And if you look at the background, it just repeats the same background over and over again.
While strolling through the park one day, in the merry month of May, I was taken by surprise by a pair of roguish eyes in the merry, merry month of May.
Nothing wrong with that, but it was just something that I noticed here, especially in this restoration. But I do like how Bugs decides to sing along as well. And in a bit that's kind of weird, Bugs asks Elmer,
"What you got in the box, Doc?"
A rabbit?
"A what?"
A rabbit, a little gray rabbit.
"Oh." "Listen, Bub, be a little more careful who you call a widow gray rabbit. See?"
Elmer looks kind of stunned. Maybe he now has the realization of why this rabbit's so cheap. In any case, Elmer, being the talented carpenter that he is, somehow has all the stuff ready to make a little pen for a rabbit. So maybe that's why he was walking. Maybe he always intended to buy a pet. I don't know. It looks pretty sturdy enough, so he gets the rabbit. And I love Bugs' expression there. He's like a little pouty child as he's being carried along and he's put inside this pen. And now Bugs is all angry and he's just pacing backwards and forwards, complaining about his conditions.
"Frankly, old man, I don't like it. It stinks. When I think what I might have been, dead, makes my blood boil. Me, a potential Easter bunny. 4 walls. Oh, the irony of it all."
So again, this is an extension of what was happening in Elmer's Candid Camera, where Bugs will just go off on these little asides and he'll just pace backwards and forwards, just complaining about stuff.
"Shut. I'm a cute little rabbit. Gee, anybody would like to photograph me. Gee whiz, I'm some kid. I'm too scared. Why don't they photograph me?"
So this Bugs is clearly the same one as the Elmer's Candid Camera, and that's why, yeah, there's that whole complicated mess of a history on this rabbit character. But Elmer gives him a bucket full of vegetables, and in this case, Bugs doesn't seem to want carrots, which is kind of an interesting little touch. I mean, that becomes his trait later on.
"What's this?"
Your dinner?
"My what? My dinner? What do you think I am, a rabbit? I'll starve before I'll eat this stuff. That's what I'll do. I'll starve. You'll be sorry, starving a little gray rabbit."
But I'll admit, what made me laugh here is How he's just complaining about eating vegetables and how he's going to starve, and he just continues eating all those vegetables, saying, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And the animation of him just stuffing his face, though, really love that.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. This is terrible. Me eating this stuff. It's disgraceful. That's what it is. How do you expect me to stomach this stuff?
Afterwards, we see that some time has passed because now it's nighttime, and we see Bugs have that really full belly, which doesn't stay that way for the rest of the short, but that's okay. I just like the added touch there. And he's still complaining about how a cold little rabbit's out there starving. Such a bizarre characterization. And Elmer says then the immortal line,
That was really an awfully good leg of lamb.
he ends up going into the lounge room, turns on the radio, because remember, when this came out, TVs weren't really around, except for the maybe ultra-rich, and even then, there were few and far between. Radio was king, so he turns on the radio, and we hear the song, Where Was I? He sits down, and he says, wondering how Dick Tracy made out, because Dick Tracy was a very popular comic strip printed in all the newspapers at the time. But I gotta say, Elmer definitely has a good idea of what my ideal Saturday night would be, just, in front of a fire, beautiful music, and something really nice to read. Now that's my ideal night, but we hear the door knocking, and Bugs just walks in saying,
Hi, Bub.
giving back the carrot to Elmer for some reason. Again, it's kind of weird. Bugs loves carrots, so yeah. You can tell that they haven't quite nailed everything down yet, right? And Elmer even breaks the fourth wall in shock as well. And Bugs, for whatever reason, he's not even really provoked in this short, so that's another difference in terms of character that will be refined later on. He just randomly changes the radio, which plays Mi Caballero, which also plays as they start dancing. But why is Bugs doing this? He got home, so we've got this incredibly funny dance animation here. This sort of a scene, you do sort of get a glimpse of the future Bugs character where he randomly just decides to dance with someone and just play on their anger.
You dance divine like really girl.
That's a parody of Katharine Hepburn. I gotta say, his face is drawn so weird in that impersonation of Katharine Hepburn. But Elmer kicks out Bugs. Bugs breaks the fourth wall. I suppose you guys haven't been thrown out of no place.
Okay, so I got thrown out. I suppose none of you never got thrown out of no place.
The punchline doesn't quite land there, but we see Elmer. He enters his room and gets ready to have a shower. But this is the sort of thing that Chuck would do away with, because that whole bit of him walking up the stairs and into the room, you don't really need it. It's just padding for no reason. He could have just started this scene off with him walking out of his room ready to take a shower. You'd lose nothing. But anyway, so Elmer ends up whistling, I guess that's his theme for the short, The Fountain in the Park, and he sees Bugs is there with the C magazine, which again, as I mentioned before, is a parody of Look magazine, and naturally Elmer is pissed.
Wait your turn.
Both Bugs and Elmer have a fight behind the shower curtain, which is the sort of thing that Jones will do much better later on. But Bugs is now in the bathtub, once again just complaining, just pacing backwards and forwards. Admittedly, I'm glad they did away with that trait.
Just so much of this. The humiliation. He seems to forget that I'm a guest in his house, that he's responsible for my welfare. Oh, that's it.
So now Bugs decides to pretend that he is drowning, so he's yelling, help, help. Elmer leaves the shower. He somehow has his bathrobe and his hat in there, but yeah, that's okay. So he comes out and sees that Bugs looks like he's dead, though we can clearly see that bubbles are forming there. So this is another little trait that would end up continuing on, where Elmer or some other antagonist would feel like they've gone too far. They think they've killed Bugs Bunny, but of course it's all part of the gag.
He's dead. The poor little gray rabbit is drowned.
My hero. How do you like this guy? He saves my life. And after all the things I've done to him in this picture.
It's interesting how Bugs breaks the fourth wall and he says, how do you like that? He saved my life after all the things I've done to him in this picture. So I guess Jones was also trying to pick up on some of the Tex Avery playbook with the whole breaking of the fourth wall thing. So Bugs says to Elmer, you know what? I've been a heel. I've been bad to you. I deserve a quick kick. And the cue that's played there is love me and the world is mine.
Go ahead. I deserve it. Go ahead. Of course, you know this means war.
So Elmer just gives him a little kick. I guess it's more like, alright, fine, I'll give you a kick, but we hear the Groucho Marx saying, of course you realize this means war. But I noticed in the last minute or so, the speed actually picks up quite a bit. Not quite to what Jones would end up doing, but it's still a massive improvement. So Elmer enters the bedroom and we see Bugs in there yelling out,
Turn off that light!
Now, America weren't in World War II yet. Pearl Harbor would happen at the end of 1941, but there were still some defensive measures for the coastal cities was to turn off that light. So therefore there wouldn't be any targeting by potential German submarines or anything like that. But Elmer is pissed, and honestly I think they could have done this a little bit better because I really do like how Elmer goes insane in Elmer's candid camera compared to this. But we see some beautiful visual effects of the two fighting it out, some massive bursts of speed, which again, if you slow-mo that, it looks incredible. And again, it's Jones picking things up. But it seems like Bugs is outside. The front door is all barricaded by his furniture, so Elmer's like, yep, I'm going to finally get to sleep. But Bugs says again, turn off that light. But we end there because the light switches off and the cartoon just ends. There's no real punchline. In fact, that's probably my major criticism here. There's no real major punchline here. Honestly, I can't even think of one. I guess the whole idea is, well, you're stuck with this rabbit, at least for tonight. Maybe you can take him back to the pet store in the morning. But all in all, though, this one, again, it's more interesting as a curio. It's definitely got some funny bits in there. Some wonky timing, but Chuck is definitely improving. And again, I think this cartoon is just a fluke being called a Bugs Bunny cartoon due to the nature of the different production cycles. This one gets 7 out of 10 because I was entertained by it. You know, it's by no means a brilliant short or anything, but I don't know, there's just something about these earlier Elmer and Bugs shorts by Jones that there's just a bit of charm about them. I don't know, but I enjoyed it at the very least. And yeah, if you get that Looney Tunes Collector's Choice set, you can marvel at it in beautiful HD quality. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.